Crank up the volume and get ready for real-world bird hunting by listening to the Wingmen Podcast by Eastmans. Now your host, Todd Helms.
Hey guys, this episode of the Wingmen Podcast is brought to you by Sitka Gear. And we've been partnered with Sitka for, 4 years, 5 years now, since the beginning. We've been wearing Sitka Gear, and you guys have heard me talk about Sitka Gear on and off and sing their praises. But what I wanted to do is explain to you exactly why I'm a believer in Sitka Gear and what it's done for me as a waterfowler. First of all, I grew up wearing hand-me-down clothes, wearing that stuff in the 80s and 90s where I was always wet. I was always cold. And so having good, high-quality gear that keeps me in the field until I'm ready to go home is vital. And it's just super important, and I appreciate it so much. And the folks over at Sitka just build the single best waterfowl clothing on the planet. The fit, the performance, every single piece is thought out perfectly, and it is performance driven. I think back to some of the hunts that we do out here just last season, as a matter of fact, hunting at 21 below zero on a late season goose and duck hunt. I was able to stay out there long enough in the field that I harvested my dream bird, which was a Drake pintail. That was using Sitka's boreal setup, both the parka, both the jacket, and the bibs. That stuff is built for the late season. But there's more to, obviously, Sitka's waterfowl setup or Sitka's waterfowl system, I should say, than just simply cold weather. I look at the Delta system, and it is designed to keep you dry even in the early season when it's warm and you might be working up a big sweat walking into your spot. That system's going to breathe, and it's going to keep you dry from the outside while also ventilating you from the inside. I've seen it on cold days. I've seen this exact thing happen with when I'm layered up with the Sitka gear. I start with either a synthetic or their merino base, and then I put on, a lot of times I'll just put on like either a soft shell or a puffy vest, and then either a soft shell or a puffy on top. The Dakota hoodie is one of my favorite pieces, but I've also used some pieces that are no longer in production, which is a high mountain hoodie. But I've seen the moisture get pulled off my skin through the layers and actually freeze as ice particles and frost particles on the outside of the clothing. Now what that's doing is it's telling me that sweat that I worked up in the morning going into my spot is getting sucked away from my skin, keeping me warm and keeping me dry and keeping me in the blind hunting birds. Hey guys, welcome to episode 65, don't hold me to that, of the Wingmen Podcast. Pretty sure it's episode 65.
For a guy whose content is based on counting limits, this really scares me, Todd.
Once it gets over a dozen, I'm out. Anyway, as you can see, I have Mr. Scott Reekers on the podcast with me today. Scott, thanks for jumping on.
Absolutely.
We're just going to sit down and hash out some preseason stuff, talk about what you've got going on, maybe revisit some highlights from last season. Brandon Mason and I leave Saturday.
Yep.
Today's Thursday. We leave Saturday for Canada. We've talked about that with Ike. Brandon and I talked about that in yesterday's recording. And we're stoked. It's gotten to the point where it's one of those things where our to-do lists have shrunk and shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. And I'm trying to put out a magazine, the latest issue of EHJ, the Hunt Camp issue, before I go. And because I'm going to be gone, I'm going to be in Canada when we send to print, which is like.
That means I get to do you and Brandon's job.
Yeah, dude.
Actually, yours.
And it's not that I don't trust you, but it's like, and I have to trust you, and I have to trust my copy editors. Yep. You know, you have to be able to lean on other people a little bit, and I'm not good at that. Yeah. I'm the control freak. I'm like, no, I gotta have
just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Yeah. You want help with the decoys? Nope. You sure? Nope. Sit there.
That's where that turns into like me, Hunter, and Brandon throwing decoys at you while you're arranging them, just for fun.
And it works. I don't care. I don't care. It's one of those things where And I do. I get a little CDO on that stuff, but whatever. So anyway, we leave Saturday, and we're both jacked, obviously. And it looks like it's going to be predominantly geese. Canadas and specklebellies, which
I have not killed a speck yet.
It's hard. In Wyoming, we don't see very many of them. The first speck I ever killed was here in Wyoming, and it was a fluke, absolute fluke deal. And then there was a little group of them on the river down where I used to live, but they always were like in town.
Yeah.
And you never got a crack at them. But other than that, until I went to Oklahoma last year, never killed a speck, just that one. So we should see Canadas and specks. But yeah, getting everything dialed before we go. Tomorrow's going to be a gear day for me. It's going to be getting everything packed, making sure that all the logistics are in order, and going from there. But, just managing your workload so you can be gone for 8 days or 10 days.
It's a challenge. Like, I'm gone for 2 types of trips here, hunting-wise, at work. And it's mostly for mule deer, because that's my favorite thing. And then, so that being my favorite, that's the one where I haul a camera along and do stuff like that.
Right.
So, shameless plug, there are a couple of episodes out on YouTube where we've got the llamas with. So that takes up most of my September and October. But sometimes I get lucky and kill earlier in September. Then I'm actually here for the first split. And if I'm here for the first split, I can actually enjoy it, because there are enough local birds here that you can have a couple of good hunts when you do that.
Right.
And you get some variety, because we've actually had, and they're usually fairly immature birds, but we've had wood ducks here.
Oh yeah.
Which is kind of cool to do, because when you think, Northwest Wyoming, you don't think like wood duck habitat.
Right.
It's not if somebody came here to hunt, that's not what they would expect to kill. You'd expect to get your mallards and your teal and a little bit of variety with that, but that would not be normal to kill a couple of wood ducks.
And there's a reason, we say it over and over and over again, our best duck hunting, our best waterfowl hunting in general is December, January, and right to the close of the season.
Yep.
And I've said it for years. I wish they'd give us a 10-day teal season.
Yep.
Like today's September 1st. Open it September 1st, run it through the 10th, and shut us down until I'd be fine with Halloween.
Yep.
And then run us later even into February. Yep. I would love to see that. Maybe someday it'll happen. There's enough people chirping about it that whatever. But let's face it, waterfowl doesn't get a lot of airtime in Wyoming. We are a big game state.
Yep.
And rightly so. I mean, we have world-class big game hunting. You're headed out in 15 days. Well, probably about 13 days.
Yeah,
realistically.
I'll leave on the 14th for my first hunt. My first hunt, this is going to be an odd experience. I'm actually going into a spot with a buddy that I haven't scouted, but I'm going because there's
that control thing again. I'd be like,
well, it's an area I've been into. I know where the big deer hang out in there, but I've got a hunt a little bit later planned where I have scouted, but it's a different arrangement. It's who I could go with,
right,
kind of thing. And so the area that I scouted for a little bit later, I'm hoping the deer will still be there, a little bit later in the season. However, it'll be a good hunt. It'll be a fun hunt. I'm excited to go do that, because that's the one that really it really tests me, because it requires a lot of patience to hunt, because the deer are hard-horned, so their behavior has changed.
Right.
There's a real chance of weather, because it's a little bit later, so there's a real chance that I could get dumped on 6-7 inches of snow. However, if I'm up there when that happens, the deer stick out like sore thumbs when that happens. And so that gives you a strategic advantage, but you have to be there right when it when the snow clears. And you have to be looking in places that the bucks are at.
Right.
And you can't do that. You can't just leave here and say, all right, well, I'm going to go hunt. I'm going to go home because there's snow, and then you're a day and a half late after the snow's there.
Right.
They've already changed their behavior.
It's almost like you have to weather the storm on the mountain. And then so when that weather breaks, like the next morning, those deer are going to be up, and they're going to feed a lot, probably most of the day.
Yep.
Because they've been bedded down, holed up for however long.
And sometimes, actually, some of the best times, if you depending on your terrain, hunting like Ike likes to call them sucker holes. Whenever you're in the middle of a storm where there's those breaks where you can see for a couple miles again, and so you quick run over, they like to come out during those times too. And so that's a good opportunity to find a buck. But we'll see. I mean, we'll see what happens. We're sitting in the middle of 90-degree weather right now.
Yeah, it's 93 degrees outside right now on September 1st.
And we're going to have that for the next week, and then it dramatically drops by about 30 degrees. So I'm kind of fully expecting that there's going to be a lot of reports that the Labor Day weekend was pretty worthless as far as elk activity goes. But by around mid-September, it'll probably be good for the rut. And then when I'm actually deer hunting, it'll be pretty good for us as far as temperature-wise. But we'll see. I've seen it warm way up at the tail end of September too.
Get those Indian summer days.
Yeah, so you never know what you're going to get. Last year, it was ridiculous dry. This year, when I went scouting in a couple of places, the grass was actually up to my knees on top.
Which,
so
up to Scott's knees is like up to my waist. So if you can't tell sitting here, he's like 6'5". So when I need stuff heavy, hauled a long ways, like sleds full of decoys, I'm like, hey, mule man, come over here.
See, well, here's actually, like, I haven't told you this. Like, I've jokingly called you, like, your build is kind of gorilla-esque. I'm actually kind of Sasquatch.
Yeah, you are. You are. You got that length. You got that length. The little silverback over here, and then you got the old skunk ape sitting over here on the other side. We give each other a lot of crap around the office, as you can tell. Yeah, well, dude, that's super cool. That's something that I've done a couple times. I've done the high country deer thing, but we talk a lot, and I know whenever we get on the Wingmen podcast and I get guys from the office in, the talk invariably leans more a little toward big game.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's Eastmans is our parent company. We're under that umbrella. We love to hunt just about everything.
Yep.
But we've had the conversation, we joke around the office, that you're either a deer guy, and when I say deer, I'm talking mule deer.
Mule deer.
You're either a deer guy or you're an elk guy.
Yep.
You're a mule deer guy. You're got bit by that bug through and through. It's like you kind of be like, elk, whatever. Well, and I'm the opposite. And so while you're up with a rifle in the deer woods in September, I'm at 7,000 feet chasing screaming bulls with my bow.
I'm taking you with me deer hunting some year.
It would be fun. Like I said, I've done it once, one fall. I made a couple trips into the area over kind of close to where you are. I had a lot of fun. I was solo. I didn't kill a buck. I had opportunities. I let lots of deer walk. Then I'm like, nah. And it's cool, but I'm like, man, that's 3 days of elk hunting that I'm not going to get back.
Yeah. So, well, here's a funny story. Yesterday, I recorded a podcast, the Deer Eater podcast, with one of our really good friends from the industry. His name's Josh Kinzer, and then his buddy that he records the Deer Eater podcast.
Is Josh?
He's doing good.
Yeah.
So I heard a few more stories on that thing.
He is a storytelling extraordinaire.
Yes.
His monkey stories. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I've never laughed that hard at someone that I barely knew in my entire life.
Yep. Absolutely. And so I said this on the air or on that podcast, and I know as soon as a few people from the office are going to make fun of me, and I'm just going to double down on it just to make sure it gets heard. I think rut-crazed elk are stupid.
They can be.
I honestly think that. I think more bull elk get saved by cows because of proximity to the wary ones are the cows. And I chased so many of them, and then the other piece of the equation, like why I got the mule deer bug was I have killed a lot of elk, and because I'd killed so many, I wanted to take that next step, so to speak, as far as being selective. I'll have a 3-year relationship with many of these bucks.
Yeah, you spend a lot of time, man. You just got back from your scouting mission up there, and you'll see bucks year after year after year that you're and the whitetail guys get this. You guys that are listening to this podcast that live not in the West, they get it. My brother in Iowa, man, he watches whitetails grow up.
Yep.
From the time they're 2-year-olds, so he's like, he's got a lot of potential. Then at 3, 4, 5, 6, and you do the same thing with mule deer because they go back to the same places year in and year out.
And a mule deer's high country habitat is like on the low end about 1 square mile, like in the summer, and plug our migration film. They follow this green wave, and they stay connected to their food source for the whole, like as long as they possibly can. And so they're constantly eating on the edge of the best growing food. And so that's how they end up in the high country. That's how they end up in those rugged places. It's the last place to grow and retain. A lot of people don't realize this is even into September and October, you can have green ups. So like what you're talking about, that Indian summer, quote unquote, is that you can get snow and then it'll melt off really fast.
Stuff greens up.
And the stuff, especially around the cliffs, it greens up one last time.
Yep.
And because of that, that's where those animals will hang out. And they have their hiding areas. They use the moon. But I'll scout those animals and I'll get a 3-year relationship with them. And so, I may not obviously I'm not going to kill all those bucks that I've been watching, but I found 2 this year that I'm paying attention to for the next 2 years.
Sure.
They were definitely young bucks. They have a lot of potential to grow. They're both typical frames, 4x4s. But they're young bucks. They're 3.5, 4.5, and so they've got time to grow. A mature mule deer buck, like a legitimate mule deer buck that's big, usually is at least 5.
Yeah.
And you can occasionally get a 4-year-old that'll be in that 170s, but a lot of guys don't have the trigger control. I didn't when I was younger, not to shoot a 170, but you want to get into that next phase, like that impressive phase, and that's hard to get where they just actually really impress you. And so it's a long-term relationship with the country. I know a lot of guys who also they hotspot. Oh man, it sounded like it was good over there last year. We should go in there. Well, they never get to know certain areas. The better you get to know, I've probably got 10 areas that I could go at any given point and find deer, but that comes from living here, knowing it, and really getting to understand all those areas. And if I was really honest, I could probably narrow that down to about 5 that I would say, okay, those are the ones I'll concentrate on.
Well, I've seen you pull up your Onyx app, and it's just like waypoint, and there's little clusters of them.
Yep.
Then it's like there's a whole lot of country in the middle with nothing, and then there's little clusters. And mine looks similar for my elk stuff, but anyway, the migration you were talking about, it is the exact same thing with waterfowl. Yep. They're not migrating in elevation like our mountain animals do, but they're still following a food source.
Yep.
And Canada geese and mallards especially, they will only go as far south as they absolutely have to.
They don't like it any further south.
Well, it's one of those things where why would you expend, and I'm giving a bird with a brain that big a ton of credit, but why would you expend that energy?
Yeah.
They're pre-programmed. They are created to not expend energy.
Yep.
Expend the least amount of energy, get the maximum yield, right? Yep. We're lucky here because, and I saw it last year in Oklahoma, if we don't get the weather, and by we I mean the western provinces of Canada, Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, if we don't get hard weather, we winter birds like crazy.
Yep.
The Yellowstone, all the tributaries of the Yellowstone, these big western rivers, they've historically held waterfowl. Yep. But now with agriculture in the river bottoms,
there's no reason to leave.
There's zero reason to leave. And we only see those birds push south further.
Yep.
And not all of them stay here, obviously, because you go to the Denver area, the Rocky Mountain front, and my gosh, there are tens of thousands of geese and ducks that winter there, all the way down into Oklahoma and in Texas. They keep going. But these big, I guess, these larger subspecies of Canada geese.
Yep.
That's what we have.
Yep.
And that's what stay, and they're starting, more and more of them are staying all year round.
Yeah.
They don't leave.
There's no reason
No. And so if we don't have weather, birds are hung up in Montana.
Yep.
And they're shooting them up, and we're whining. If the provinces, the western provinces, Alberta and Saskatchewan don't have weather, the birds are up there.
Yep.
And Montana's whining, and of course Wyoming's really whining then.
Yep.
Nebraska, everybody. It's all part of that. But those birds follow that front of that food. And it's so weather dependent, because as long as they have open water and food, they're fine.
Yep.
And what we get here is we'll get big snows sometimes the end of the season, January, early February, and we'll still have open water.
Yep.
But the birds can't get feed because there's a foot or two of snow on the ground.
Yep.
And geese can't get down through that,
Yep.
and ducks really can't. So the ducks, they're gone.
They're gone.
And you'll have some ducks that stay on the rivers, on the open water, because they feed pretty easily, much more so than geese do. But it's amazing to me when we start talking about migrations, whether it's mule deer or whether it's antelope or whether it's waterfowl,
Or even elk in this Yellowstone front.
yeah, it's all for the same reason. It's all for the same reason. It's for weather and feed. And it's amazing to me when you look at the big picture of it, how closely it's all tied together.
Yep.
And how a mule deer guy like you can apply those same exact principles from the mule deer migration to waterfowl.
It's just food. It's just where is that food going to be, and where do they want to be when they're not eating?
Right.
If you apply that to just about any animal outside of the rut, like once they're rutting, you can throw those things out, and you may as well just chase. Like with elk, this is funny. Like a lot of guys.
So I want to get back to your derogatory statement about stupid bull elk. Let's revisit that.
Okay, so here's what I mean. Elk are herd animals, so their survival is based on safety of the group, and so elk are very reactive in the way that they behave. So, for instance, there are a lot of bull elk that have died because they have one stupid raghorn in their group that takes off, that gets flighty and takes off. So and then they all tend to run the same way. And then sometimes they, like, once they get into that flighty mood as a herd, chaos ensues. But the reason that chaos ensues is because when they were created, they were designed to fend off wolves. And so that chaos throws the wolves off, because what happens is they have to be able to isolate and target a single animal. Yes.
Right.
And so if there is chaos going on, a wolf knows that it'll get trampled by that entire herd. And so they can't isolate. Well, for me as a hunter, when you look at the behavior of elk, and think about our seasons, the vast majority, and I'll throw in one caveat, the vast majority of our hunting seasons, including our rifle seasons, run at some phase of the rut when bull elk are at their stupidest. And so, with the exception of our later season hunts. And so when you look at the very latest season, sometimes you will see a big mature bull elk. He'll behave like a mule deer.
Exactly.
And
I'm glad you started talking about that, because it's almost like their life cycles are reversed.
Yep.
When mule deer, because I mean, let's face it, if you could hunt mule deer with a rifle right now, you'd extirpate your mature bucks, because they're easy to find.
Yep.
But once they go hardhorn, that changes completely. They turn into the gray ghost, right? Everybody knows that. October is the hardest time to kill a big mule deer. Just like late November, in mid-October to about first part of November is the hardest time to kill a big bull elk. They flip-flop. And it's because of their life cycles.
I'll say this, though. I do know a couple outfitters who love to kill big bull elk October 15th to October 25th.
They've got a
second
system.
cycles.
Yeah, they're looking for second cycle cows, or they've found a honey hole where they know those big bulls go. Because Guy Eastman said it the best for elk that I have ever heard anybody say it. When you're a mature bull elk, And by mature, I mean 8 to 10 years old.
Yep.
You're the big dog.
Yep.
You're at your physical prime. You've survived a bunch of hunting seasons. You've survived in our neck of the woods. You've survived wolves and grizzly bears and mountain lions and whatever, all kinds of predation. You've got something figured out if you've lived that long as a bull elk. Same with a mule deer buck.
Yep.
They've got it figured out. They're habitual, and they will continue to do the same exact thing that's kept them alive for that period of time. So somebody like that has something figured out where he's like, they always go here.
Yep.
This is a safe spot. Because when those, back to the point of what I was making about Guy, the elk rut is chaos.
Yep.
More than any other ungulate. Whitetails come close.
Yep.
But the elk rut is chaos.
But I think whitetail's window of chaos is shorter. Regionally, it's shorter.
Man, I don't know. I'd say they're about the same.
Really?
Yeah, because you get second cycle whitetail does all the way into December. And so those deer are always in the breeding stage from about the end of October in our area, from about the end of October into the first part of December. Yeah. It's about the same for elk. You're looking at middle of September into middle of October, really. And so anyway, what Guy said was, for a big mature bull elk, he's going so hard, he's going to breed for about a 2-week window. He's got it figured out. That's all he's going to do. He's going to hang on the periphery, let the young guys round up all the cows, and then he's going to be like, oh, that's cute. Thanks for doing my work for me, fellas. And he's going to wade in and take what he wants. He's going to breed a bunch of cows, and it's going to be chaos for 2 weeks. And then he's going to go disappear.
Yep.
And he's going to go into some hellhole someplace where the sun barely shines, and he's going to sleep, and he's going to drink. He's not even hardly going to eat much. And Guy equated it to this. Imagine going to Las Vegas and partying your ass off for a week straight. Loud music. You know, the noise levels up here. That's the elk rut. Yeah. Noise levels up here. You're constantly running around. You're not sleeping. You're not eating. You're just partying. That's a bull elk in that time frame, a mature bull especially. And when that's over, what would you want to do? Just come home and hide in a closet where it's dark and drink ice cold water and just recover. You know, I just want to sleep for like a week. That's what these bulls do, and they disappear because of that. So outfitters like that have something figured out where it's like there's this little pocket, and it's usually just nasty, whether it's thick timber, nasty, high alpine, gross stuff. It's just interesting. But this is the dynamic between mule deer guys and elk guys. It's a constant, I won't even say give and take. It's a constant battle. Mine's better. No, mine's better, you know. And because I have seen, the first time I was really exposed to a really good concentration of mule deer, because growing up in the upper Midwest, we didn't have mule deer, was when I lived in Sheridan, Wyoming. Yep. And the mule deer season there runs October 15th through like Halloween, and then it's done. It's a 15-day window, and that's a hard time of year to kill a big buck. Yep. Really hard time. They don't spend a lot of time out in the daylight. Really hard time of year to kill a big buck.
They're staging for the rut, which means they're in the black timber a lot.
Right.
They're right on the edge.
They're in those, out east, in if you're in the mountains, if you're out in the Badlandsy country, and I'm getting to that point, is they're in those wild plum thickets. You can't glass them because they're buried in cover. The revelation was when pheasant season opened in November. Yep. And I'd go out early in the morning to go hunt pheasants. I worked 4 days a week. I was on a 4-day shift at that time. So I'd hunt every Friday and Saturday. And I was out. I wanted to be the first one out, you know. Yep. Butt crack of dawn. Grab Mackinac, go. So I'm driving these country road, these ranch roads through this. It's really good mule deer country over there. Yes. It really is. It's just that season, and it's private property.
It's done on purpose.
Yep, and it's private property, so there's not a lot of access to them. But, man, there's some big deer there. And I didn't realize that until pheasant season. Yep. And I'm driving around in the early morning, and there are whopper muleys everywhere you looked, chasing does, and you want to talk about dumb. I mean, stand there and look at the truck and like,
oh, yeah.
You could walk up and spear them, I think. You know, it was like, it was unreal.
Well,
so it's just a different thing.
But I'll say this. I think, well, I'll put this out there like this. And part of it is, again, is that herd animal dynamic, like the way they operate in herds.
Right.
There are big bucks on the mule deer winter range that are never seen, but they're seen every year in the high country.
Right.
And the reason for that is they avoid the pressure, whereas elk will move as a unit. So let's use Brutus as an example, and maybe you can make the argument maybe that Jackson doesn't count, but remember Brutus, the elk?
Grounds, yeah. I saw him in person. He was most impressive bull I've ever seen.
Unreal. And so, but the point that I'm making is because of how they have that herd dynamic, that big herd dynamic, whereas mule deer don't, they're allowed to think. And so, like, for instance, there's a video on social media right now of a 180, 185 type mule deer buck, and he's laying in a piece of grass.
The horse guys
walk right past him.
Yep.
And actually, if you go back and read a story that was in the magazine, a friend of mine, Matt, he was involved in. He didn't pull the trigger. His buddy did. I think Bobby was his buddy's name. But Bobby killed this buck that they'd nicknamed Frazier. They had been hunting him all season. Frazier stood still while horse guys, outfitters rode right by him, and he was almost a 200-inch deer.
Wow.
And so Matt and Bobby watched from above, and then Bobby went down and killed him. And so, and this is a hardhorn buck. This wasn't just like a velvet buck that was,
right,
like that was being stupid. This was like late in the general season in Wyoming, and he just held still.
Yeah.
He understood that if he held still, which to me, you and I've had this conversation in the blind, where when we unless it's like one of those crazy times like what we had last year with that giant wad of ducks, like unless it's one of those giant wads of ducks, like geese, I think behave a lot more or have more in common with the way they group think, like elk, and mallards probably do a little bit more with mule deer, because a lot of times mallards come in groups of 3 or 4. What do you find with mule deer? 3 or 4, and it's what they eat too.
Well, that's part of it. The other part of it that's unique about mallards, at the time of year when we're hunting them, they're pair bonding.
Yeah, that's true.
And so you'll if you look at those 3s, for example,
yeah,
it'll be 1 hen and 3 drakes, or two drakes, or 1 hen and 3 or 4 drakes. Those small groups, they're chasing her around. They're trying to pair bond is what they're doing, and so it's a little bit different. But I definitely see where your head's at.
And I like shooting mallards better than geese, personally.
I do too. And it's honestly, I think that comes from a childhood of the formative years of we had geese out our wazoo.
Yeah.
And ducks were like, we hunted ducks and we killed ducks, but we didn't have lots and lots of ducks. Yeah. And so I can count on one hand from the time I was 12 years old and could start hunting to college, the number of just absolute rain out duck days.
Yeah.
Where we had just clouds and clouds of ducks. Now it's a little bit different. We have we're blessed. We have really good duck hunting. Obviously some days are better than others, but we had a day last year that, and we took Ike and his daughter out. Mm-hmm. You were on this hunt. Because Ike and I were talking yesterday about how we were trying to find enough Sitka gear that would actually fit her to get her into it.
It was a challenge.
But that hunt in particular, Dan Picard filmed. I think Luke Washington filmed a little bit too. That hunt in particular was, if we would have shot better, we could have killed our 30 Drake mallards in probably 15 or 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And if we would have been in a situation, because the river really limits how many birds you can shoot at one time, because we can't in the spot, that particular spot, you can kind of help the dogs by waiting a little bit, but not much. So it's 2 or 3 birds max. Knock them down, and then the dogs are busting their butts to try to mop them up.
It's going to be nice having a third dog, even with Hondo being that young. This year, we'll see how that dynamics. We've got to bring Ace and Hondo out at the same time, see if they can even do it.
They'll be fine. They'll be fine. It's one of those deals where we just hunt them. We'll hunt them just like we hunt Mac and Ace, where we're on opposite ends. And I'm gonna be doing a lot of dog control this year with that young dog. I'm gonna be probably not pulling the trigger near as much. And
no pressure, Scott, to get killed. No pressure.
That's kind of where I was headed with that. But I hope you've been practicing. You better grab one of these Savage Renegades.
I've actually got to go spend some time. We've got a skeet shoot. Like I'm involved in a college ministry here, and we do a skeet shooting day. So I'm definitely going to bring that. Bring that
take
out
one of these Renegades and break it in. Yeah, I know we've got more coming. We got these 2 that Brandon and I are going to take to Canada, and so far I've been really impressed with that Renegade. It's been. And I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to putting it through the paces. But I've shot enough semi-autos over the years. I know what a good one is made of, and this is going to be a great shot.
Well, it's going to be
a great gun.
Interesting to me. I think you were with me at SHOT when we pulled this thing apart.
Yeah.
And the way the gas system works was quite a bit different. Like they actually thought outside of the box.
It's a new take. Yeah, it's a new take, and it's a little bit outside the box. There's some things. Typical Savage, man. You look at this, and even if it wasn't branded a Savage. You'd go, I think that's a Savage. Yep. You look at the stock configuration. I love how it's completely adjustable. And it comes with all kinds of different cheek pieces and combs, and you can adjust length of pull, you can adjust comb height, you can do all different kinds of stuff. But I've never seen a shotgun with a fluted barrel. I don't know if it serves a real purpose other than it's appealing.
Yeah.
To look at it, it's like, that's super cool. Now, fluting does increase the rigidity of your barrel. In a rifle, that's important. Yeah. It's super important. But fluting also increases your surface area. So if I had to guess, the thought process behind that design, because I haven't talked to anybody at Savage about this, but in high-volume shooting situations, think today's opening day of dove season. Those guys in Texas are burning millions of rounds.
Insanity.
Today. Yeah, it is. We don't have that here.
No.
But guys do. In high-volume shooting situations where your gun's smoking hot, that fluting is going to help that barrel cool, which not as big of an issue in a shotgun as it is in a rifle. Because we're talking in a rifle, that heat does nasty things to your accuracy. Shotgun, not so much. But it'll like I said, I would have to imagine that extra cooling is going to help extend that barrel life.
Yep.
And you're not going to shoot out the barrel of a shotgun. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But it just, and it, like I said, it looks cool. It's a cool looking shotgun, and I've been super impressed so far. I'm excited to get it up there. We're going to take, we're going to be shooting federal ammunition like we always do, and I think I'm just going to go with the tried and true Black Cloud, 3-inch 3-inch twos.
What I'm gonna go and get and make sure that I have enough of to last me for the season.
Hey guys, going to take pause for a minute and bring you a word from our sponsors. Hey guys, you've heard me talk about my favorite roast from Black Rifle Coffee being the Just Black. Well, I've also got another favorite for when I don't have time to brew a pot of coffee, or I want something a little sweeter, or later in the day and I want a cold coffee, an iced coffee. And that's the ready-to-drink coffees from Black Rifle. I really like the 300 series. I am a caffeine junkie. Probably not good for me. My doctor's probably cringing listening to this right now, but 300 milligrams of caffeine just fuels my fire, gets me going, gives me that edge I need to continue on throughout my day at that top level. Plus, man, those 300s just taste so good. There's the rich mocha flavor, there's the vanilla flavor. Both of them are phenomenal, and you could find them all over the place. That's a cool thing about Black Rifle is it's getting to be pretty mainstream, and even in our little neck of the mountains out here in Wyoming, I can go to the hardware store and get Black Rifle coffee. I can go to my grocery store and get Black Rifle coffee. I can go to the local gas station and get it when I fill up. Those ready-to-drink cans, man, I walk in, I grab 2 or 3 of them, I throw them in a cooler full of ice, and midday, pop one, and I'm ready to go for the rest of the day. And that's just that smooth, icy refreshment. Man, it's so good. If you like iced coffee, do yourself a favor and check out Black Rifle Coffee's ready-to-drink coffees in a can. Like I said, you can get them all over the place. You can even order them online. And especially my vote is the 300 series, 300 milligrams of caffeine. Just if you're an energy drink guy or person, I should say, you're probably consuming too much caffeine anyway, so why not take it up a notch anyway and go all the way to 300? Just do it. Anyway, Black Rifle Coffee, thank you for sponsoring today's podcast. And guys, check them out. You can go online. You can order it there. You can get a Black Rifle Coffee membership, get decals, whatever. There's a cool company, cool product, great group of people, and it's veteran-owned. USA, baby. Check it out, blackriflecoffee.com. Thanks again, guys, for sponsoring today's episode.
Yeah, no kidding. Anyway, we've been all over the place with this. The last 3 episodes have been rabbit trails galore. It's been ridiculous.
I'm okay with that. They're actually
Scott
more entertaining that way.
Well, you and I got off on the big game tangent, and you can tell. And I think probably a lot of guys listening to this, they're big game hunters too.
Yeah.
They might be whitetail guys, and I'm not putting you down because I grew up a whitetail guy, and I still have a soft spot in my heart for whitetails. It just so happens that November here is the time when I can actually get away. And what's available in November out west? Whitetails. Mm-hmm. So I go and hunt whitetails, and I have a really good time doing that.
Well, I'll probably be going with you if I don't kill a mule deer this year. But
not this year because I have a mule deer tag.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
I have a glorious mule deer tag.
Well, I'll sign a confidentiality agreement, and I'll go over to the Black Hills, and maybe I'll
don't
shoot
even
one
say
of your
don't even say those words. Don't even say those
I
words.
didn't say what state.
No, it's go to South Dakota. It's loaded with whitetails.
Yes, it is.
Anyway, good grief. Back to the dogs. I know you've been working with Ace, and we give you a lot of grief about Ace because he's a meathead. You've had your trials with that dog. It took 2 years. Yeah.
It took 2 years to get him, quote unquote, solid. But part of it was me understanding who he is, and this would drive some of the old school guys nuts. But like, we're on a river, so like you can see in the video, we did a review on some product, and you can see that he will go straight into the water when it is not moving. And there is no issue with drive when it is not moving. However, his confidence is diminished on a river. And so what I have to do as his handler is, number one, if I know I'm going to hunt a spot during the year, so this is local, if I know I'm going to hunt a new spot, I have to take him there beforehand. I have to work him in that spot so he understands a couple of things. First and foremost, where he's at. Second is where he likes to get in or get out.
Right.
For him, that he is confident if he knows where he can go in and go out and understands that. And then the other piece of that equation is me just being positive with him and not getting frustrated, because if I get frustrated,
he shuts down.
Yeah, he shuts down. It. And so I can't do that. I have to just be positive with him. And I think that's every dog. Every dog has their personality. Mm-hmm. An immense amount of drive helps on a river.
Right.
Like, I know my next lab will be from a bloodline that hunts on rivers regularly. That's going to be one of those differences. And I'll even say this: what probably separates, as far as Western waterfowl dogs, what separates them is going to be their take on rivers, because rivers are what is open for a lot of us here out west. Mm-hmm. And so that drive level and that confidence is good. My next level of training with a pup is I'm definitely going to get it at a different time of year. I think there were some confidence issues that came because he came with me to the blind, just like what happens, but he did fall in once when it was cold. Mm-hmm. And so that may have had an effect on him as a young dog, like real young puppy, several months old. Because, you saw him that one field hunt that we did where he just went out and just mauled that goose, brought it back, and was thrilled.
He loves birds.
Yeah.
He loves birds. He doesn't have, I wouldn't say he has the highest prey drive. No. I look at, and that's breeding. That's where your breeding comes in, where You didn't get to pick him.
No.
He was a gift to you, and I think you've maximized his potential.
Probably.
I really do. And he goes out, he gets birds. He's not going to win any field trials. But at the end of the day, if he can bring you that bird, great. I did a podcast. It's episode 59 maybe, with Marty Roberts of Sporting Life Kennels, and I like getting lots of different perspectives. Obviously, we've been hand in glove with Southern Oak Kennels, and Barton Ramsey and Corey Wages and those guys, and it's been a great experience, and they great guys. But every dog breeder, every dog guy, professional, has a different take. A little bit different take. They're probably gonna agree on some foundational principles. But beyond that, everybody's got a little bit different. It's like teachers. When I was a teacher, you'd get a room full of English teachers in the summertime working on standardized tests, and we all agreed on basic ground rules, but then we all had our opinions that fit into that as well. Same thing with dog trainers. And so I had a really good conversation with Marty, and we talked about the difference between meat dogs and field trial dogs. And hunt test dogs. I personally do not have the luxury at this point in my life to hunt test my dogs. Our hunt tests and hunt test clubs are very few and far between in the West. And they're a long ways. We are both family men. You have 4 little ones. I have 3. My family takes precedence over my dog. And I'm not going to drive to Missoula to go train with Chad Carmen once a week. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen. And so if I still lived in Michigan, or I lived someplace with more population and more access to that, I would absolutely hunt test Hondo. I would have hunt tested Mackinac. Why? Because it's fun. It's something cool to do with your dog. For me, it's not necessarily this bragging, my dog this kind of ribbon, and it's like, good for you. I think you care more about that than the dog does.
It's just fun to the dog.
It's fun. It gives your dog something to do. It gives you a goal. It's a neat thing, and I am not putting down the hunt test guys in any stretch. I look at the guys in Casper at Boomtown. Then I had them on the podcast early on. They just posted. One of them posted on Instagram the course that they were running. And it was, what was it? 8 retrieves. 8 retrieves, and it had the last retrieve was like a 450-yard blind. Blind. I can't run that with Mackinac. I'll probably never be able to run that with Hondo. Why? I don't have a 450-yard blind. It's like, okay, if there's a goose that's coasted 500 yards out into a field, or a duck, and I know it's out there, I can send them. And Mackinac especially is probably going to go, but I'm relying very much on his prey drive to get him there. He's probably not going to be real controllable, and that's one of the things where I'm at with Hondo at this point, where I don't have as much control as I would like to have of being able to stop him and direct him. I'm relying on his nose. So how do I compensate for that with a meat dog? Getting back to the Marty Roberts discussion. I have to be more. It's more of a team. It's more of a team where if I know there's a bird that's gone down in an area, I'm going to walk my dog over there and get them close, and then let their nose do the work. I think a lot more guys do that than don't do that. It's cool, dude. It's cool to line out a dog and send him for a half a mile. That's super cool if you can do that. In reality, the amount of time and effort that it takes to get there, I'm probably not going to invest that. And that's okay with me. You have to know what you're cool with.
This is my personal, with where I'm at, and lots of dog guys probably like, oh, that's minimal. But when I can get Ace across the river multiple times trying to find a bird, which
he did for the first time last year.
So
he crossed. And this was pivotal for me, and I said it on camera.
Yeah.
I said this is a pivotal moment because the mallard was crippled, and it was right against the bank, and Ace kind of knew there was a bird, and you were encouraging him to go across, but you could see by his body language that he's like,
I'm not sure what I'm going after.
I don't know what I'm doing. And then the bird flapped and got out on the bank, and Ace could see it. And it was like the
wind was
light
wrong.
bulb. Oh yeah, but the light bulb came on, and he went, "Oh, I got to go across the river when Dad tells me back."
And the funny part was I can't remember whether it was first split, like when my brother-in-law got to come up, but I think it was a hunt before that. I got him across on that other spot I go to. I got him across, and he got a teal underneath. He found it. So that was the first one you got to see. That one, the one that you got to see, was harder. I think, for him to recognize, because he saw the teal landing there and he was working it, but he just couldn't figure out. He couldn't figure out where but the part where that he couldn't figure out was how to get his head under this log. And so I was about to cross the river to get over to help him because I was afraid he was going to go under because the current was going enough.
Sure.
But he figured it out, went around the other side, and he's a 90-pound dog, so he pushed the log out of the way is what he ended up doing.
He's like the Arnold Schwarzenegger of labs, dude.
Yes.
You look at videos of that dog, and like you said, he's a big dumb machine, right? But he is a freaking physical specimen of a lab. Just holy smokes.
He's ripped out. He's got giant paws. He's a strong swimmer when he wants to be, and so I've gotten him across, and I've gotten him to go up and back. And so, but the hard part is keeping that control. I can get him to sit on command with help of a shock collar. So I'll give him the beep.
Get his attention.
Yep, get his attention. He's a very that sound is big for him. But when I sent him to Bo for that 6-week stint, Bo used a collar. We talked about that, and so. And I used it early for house training and things like that. No, you don't get on the couch. He got a beep. I understood that at a very early. So
tone comes first, and then the little bit of a nip comes after that,
and progressively up.
Yeah, people, that's another thing that Marty and I talked about, because so many of the British Lab crowd or traditional dog training crowd is anti-collar, anti-e-collar, anti-e-collar. I bought an e-collar the other day for Hondo.
Well, he's bigger than Mac, isn't he?
Oh, yeah.
I've got a theory on that.
Yeah. He's also got more – he's wired different.
Yeah.
He's wired a little hotter than Mackinac. Mackinac has always – he's freaking smart.
Yeah.
Mackinac's super smart.
Very smart.
And the byproduct of that smartness is a sense of self-preservation. Yep. That Hondo does not possess. Hondo goes pell-mell. Part of it is he's still a pup.
Yep.
But he goes pell-mell into situations that Mackinac stops and thinks through.
Yep.
You can see him. He's always done it. Ice is that dog's kryptonite. And not talking floating ice. I'm talking ice shelves.
Yep.
He doesn't like to jump off of things. He never has.
See, Ace doesn't like to jump off of things either.
And Hondo, look out.
Well,
he's going to Superman off that thing. He's going to go. So back to the e-collar thing, and like I said, there's going to be people that are listening to this that automatically tune me out when I say e-collar, and that's okay. That's your opinion.
Reference.
I bought the e-collar because I needed to be able to get Hondo's control, to get control of him at distance.
Yep.
Whether it's for behavioral purposes, for safety reasons, or I need to stop him and direct him with a hand signal. We're still working on that. But his prey drive, we breed these dogs with such strong prey drives, it is hard to shut it off. And I'm probably not going to go out, retrieve refusal is basically what you have to do. To get that dog, you don't get the retrieve if you don't do it right. That means without an e-collar, I'm going to walk out there and get my dog 300 yards away and walk back and do it again. Now, if I'm a dog trainer and that's my job, and I am that's what I'm doing for hours at a time, great. Dude, I got 15, 20 minutes after work. I go home, I grab the dogs, I kiss the wife, I maybe eat dinner with the kids, and then I'm off until it gets dark to go train dogs, to go work with Hondo, or it's first thing in the morning before work. We work 10-hour days.
Yep.
And so it's like I don't have a lot of free time to put into – basically what I'm getting at is I need to be able to maximize my results, my efficacy in the field. I've exhausted the backyard because it's like I can only do so much back there. And when he's in that controlled environment, dude, he is a machine.
It's his play area, though, too.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part about
There's
backyards.
no distractions in the backyard.
Yeah.
It's not the real world. It's not the real world. It's like living in a vacuum or living in a bubble, and then you step outside and you're overwhelmed. It's the same thing with training a dog. They're not going to necessarily extrapolate, I have to do this, and they can do it across a variety of conditions and situations. They have to learn how to do that. And so taking them different places and putting them in different situations, fine. I can tell you right now, and make a prediction, I'm not going to have any issues with Hondo marking birds and going on single retrieves that he can see.
Yeah.
I've been in the river with him all summer long, and he is money. He's going to struggle with a mark that's downstream of him.
Yep.
And because of the current is no longer there, he's going to go to that spot that he marked, and that bird's going to be 30 yards further downstream. Mackinac did the same thing. It's a learning curve.
Takes a while.
They have to experience that. And I'm sorry, but I'm not going to sacrifice $13 bumpers in the river to help him learn that.
Yep.
He's going to learn that on his own with another dog backing him up or somebody downstream that's going to be able to pick up that bird.
I guarantee here's how it's going to play out. Because Mackinac gets the first. Ace usually, what'll happen is Ace will see the second, and he knows where he can go in and get it. And I'm thinking our one particular blind where we go in a lot. So what's going to happen is Hondo may try and pull the second because Mac's going to mark it. Hondo may try,
I'm probably
but he's
not
going to
hunt
miss
the
it.
two together very
You don't
much.
think so?
No. Not until I have Hondo. Hondo needs all the attention.
Yeah.
Basically, he needs reps. You build a duck dog by getting him on ducks. I'm looking for a meat dog. Back to that comparison. I'm building a meat dog here.
Yeah.
I need a dog. Mackinac's a meat dog. Your dog's a meat dog. I'm not gonna hunt test him, but I need him to perform under extreme situations. And I'm sorry, and I'm not putting guys that don't hunt rivers down, but Western waterfowling in these fast Western rivers, it's hard on dogs.
Yep.
It demands a lot from dogs.
Yep.
We took back to the Ramsey Russell hunt once again last year. Prime example, we took his little Char dog the first day, just her, because I wasn't sure how Mac would, uncut male with, whatever. Let's just take her. And she did great. She didn't lose any birds. She did awesome. But there was a couple of times when that bird, she'd go to the mark, and the bird's 10 yards down, further down. And Ramsey'd whistle her and change her course, and then she'd see it, and she was on it.
Yeah.
It's just getting used to those scenarios. Took Mackinac 2 years of that to get so, like the river hunt we did with Brian Tucker of High Mountain Seasonings, Mac made some exceptional retrieves that day. None of them, to me, were like any big deal. Because I was like, I expect him to do that.
Yeah.
The first year we hunted the river, and even halfway through the second, I was like, he might get that bird.
Yeah.
Now it's his body, not his mind, because he's 10 years old. And Hondo will get to that point. It's just going to take repetition.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking forward this year to hunting Ace with the two of them together, and that emphasis is going to be on learning. And so it's definitely going to be interesting.
Here's how it's going to play out. Like, just pull Mac out. What's going to happen is you're going to send Hondo, and you'll fight through a couple with him, like working the young dog. And he'll probably grab that first one, but I'll do cleanup. That's how it'll work. I mean, and that's easy enough.
Unfortunately, the spots that we primarily hunt on the river, they're safe. We hunt them because they're safe. First of all, there's very little chance of getting a dog, in trouble. There are other places on every Western river, and especially this one, where I won't put a dog in the water.
Yep.
I look at it and like, that's a death sentence.
Yep.
I put a dog in there, it's gone. I'm just not going to make it out.
Yep.
And so you have to be cognizant of what you're doing.
You got to walk 300 yards down anywhere you plan on putting a blind and hunt
more.
And walk, and you got to look for every one of those logs on where you're going to be. And maybe that's a good thing with Aces. Aces being picky about where he goes in. I don't worry about him finding a log that I don't know is there because of that.
He and Mackinac are similar in that regard, where my first lab, Josie, was a rocket ship, just like Hondo. Hondo's he's already taken me to the vet and get sewn up once. And it's going to happen multiple times over his career. I've never, knock on wood, I've never taken Mackinac to the vet for anything other than like shots and a point. He's never had accidents because he slips into the water, or he picks his, he's got that sense of self-preservation. Once he's in the water, man, he's all go.
Yep.
And he's buttery smooth. It's funny to compare the two in the water. You watch him, and Hondo's working a lot harder.
Yeah.
But Mackinac's right the same speed, and he's just like gliding. He's like black velvet in the water. And Hondo's, going like crazy. And Mac's still, they're about the same speed. And I'm like,
has Hondo figured out how to keep his body low yet, or is he still sticking his head up?
No,
okay.
The only thing sticking out of the water on him is just his head and the back of his neck. And it's same with Mac. Mac uses his tail a lot more than Hondo does. Hondo hasn't figured out how to steer himself in the water. Hondo's still all brute force in the water. And Mackinac is like just graceful. And he'll use that big fat tail to help him turn, and it's funny.
That's one of my favorite things with young dogs, is watching them reach that point, because when they first start learning how to run in, they want to keep their head and neck, and sometimes they can get their chest.
Well, so they
doing
can
this.
see. It's so they can see.
Yep. And then all of a sudden something clicks, and they figure out how to turn into almost like a shark or an alligator.
Exactly. They're just head across the water. But yeah, it'll be an awesome fall. Like I said, get to kick it off in Canada next week, and then get back here. You'll be hunting mule deer. Mm-hmm. Pretty much, I don't worry about birds too much. I try to get some upland stuff in, but this year, I'm literally going to get back from Canada. It's going to be the middle of September already. I've got Ike has an elk tag.
Yep.
And he's already asked me to help him with that. So that's going to be a couple days.
Yep.
And then I've obviously got magazine responsibilities to continue, and blogs and everything else. And then I've got a friend who he and his son drew an elk tag in an area that I'm very familiar with. And I told him, I'll help you. I'm probably not going to be able to give him a week, but I'll be able to give him a couple days. And then I'm going to be a little selfish the end of the month, and I'm taking my family on archery elk camp. We're going to go set up the wall tent, and we're going to go have a good time. Probably shoot some mountain grouse, hunt birds in the middle of the day, hunt elk in the morning and the evening, and just go have fun. And then October will get here, and October's a super busy month for the magazines.
You got a very fast turnaround.
Yep. But by the time my deer tag ends at the end of middle of November, it'll be time to get after the ducks and the geese. And I probably honestly won't focus much on them until then. And I don't know. We're so blessed out here because we have such a wide variety of hunting opportunity.
Yes. It's insane.
It is. We can start hunting. If you bow hunt antelope, you can start hunting August 15th. Yeah, August 15th. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to stop hunting until the middle of February. And if you're a predator guy like Jeff Nimnick,
you can go all winter. But here's the thing, though. I think our hunting culture has changed with guys being more hardcore. They're figuring out wherever they live how to make it an entire year lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And I'll say that it's probably younger guys that have started doing that. I was one of them when I was younger. I learned how to extend my seasons, do more.
We hunted everything. Mm-hmm. We hunted everything when I was young.
Yep. But I think there's more people doing that. It's not just I am a deer hunter or I am, it's not just the regional specialty anymore. And people are getting into the management, and I think it's going to be a good thing, especially as we start seeing more and more of these baby boomers age out. Like my dad's a baby boomer. Chris, the guy that we've hunted with quite a bit, he's a baby boomer as well. And those guys are going to be hunting less over the course of time.
My dad shot probably his last bull elk.
Yep.
Last December, and I'll never forget it because I fretted over that hunt all fall, because it's like that situation was those elk are either there or they're not, and we're not going to be able to go find more elk. It's either going to happen or it's not. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it worked out. And I'll never forget this, Scott. He killed the bull. We walked over, stood around. We FaceTimed everybody, because we had cell service, and FaceTimed the grandkids, and video called my brother, and it was super cool. We made it a big deal. And we stood around for probably an hour. Yeah. Waited for the sun to come up over the horizon because it shot it at first light.
Yep.
Waited for the sun to come up over the horizon, so we had good light for photos, and we took a ton of pictures, and we just tried to live in that moment.
Yeah.
Just soak that in. And we were walking back to the pickup. It was close to a mile. We didn't have to go very far in the morning, but by the time we got over the elk, and then we go,
Yep.
Nice little walk, right? We had time to visit and chat on the walk back. We're about halfway back, and he stops, and he's just standing there kind of looking around, looking back at his bull laying there. And I said, everything all right? He's like, yeah, I'm just taking this all in. I was like, yeah, pretty cool experience. He goes, yeah, probably my last one. Because I'll probably never do this again.
Yep.
He's at the point, elk, even general, easy to get elk tags in the western states, once every few years for guys. You look at a general tag in Wyoming, you used to be able to draw it every other year. In a lot of cases every year. Now you're looking at every 4 years.
Yep.
For if you're a non-resident. And so it's a time thing. He's 70 years, or he will be 70 years old this month, and his big game hunting is going to consist of whitetails.
Yep.
Pretty much. Antelope when he can pull a tag. Maybe another elk, but he doesn't really have the desire either. It took us 4 hours to break down that bull.
Elk are just a ton of work.
They're
huge.
They are. And he's like, we got done, and he's like, I'm tired. And I'm like, all you've been doing is holding legs. What do you mean you're tired? Anyway, but that's where the bird hunting and the waterfowl hunting, the upland bird hunting and the waterfowl hunting are so key to being able to extend your hunting career and hunting season, because they're long. Yep. They're long seasons.
Well, and if you stack them up like what we did and get a bunch of it frozen and then made into sausage, you can actually extend that meat life too. Right. And it doesn't feel insignificant when you bring a season's worth of meat to the butcher to get made into sticks or however
so let's
you
talk
want to
about
do that.
Let's put this in perspective. High Mountain Seasoning is one of our sponsors.
Yeah.
And I love everything that they do. I love everything that they do. But they're, again, getting back to time commitments. Yeah. I don't have the time to process 400 pounds of goose breast.
Yep.
I don't. And I say 400 pounds. Think about it this way. 5 Canada geese times 2.
Yep.
You're going to get about a Canada breast, pound and a half, maybe 2 pounds.
Yeah.
And so you're looking at, out of 5 birds, you're looking at 10 pounds. Over the course of the season, you kill 50 of those.
Yep.
Kill 50 geese. That's 100 pounds of meat. You have your meat. I have mine.
Yep.
Everybody has their meat. We're eating on it throughout the season. I'm making goose jerky out of the High Mountain kits. We're making recipes with it. We're doing all different kinds of stuff with it. But over the course of a couple of years, you probably end up having some excess goose left over in your freezer. And so what we have found that we like to do is we put it all together in a pool, and we take it to a processor because we don't have the time.
Yep.
And We have it made into sticks, into sausage, into whatever, and it gets consumed. It gets doled out around the office. It gets consumed. I took in 400 pounds of assorted waterfowl. There's a little duck in there, but it was mostly goose. And that's from all of our different freezers.
Yep.
What we have left. Yeah, bunch of people. Throw it all together, pool it in, and go. That's an elk.
Yeah. There are guys, especially like if you can find it on social media or on YouTube, where you watch after snow goose season, you watch the stack of meat they get.
Yes.
The guys who really know what they're doing, and then especially when they get to the type of racks where they can just debreast them real quick, they get a lot of meat out of that, and it's very intentional. They have processes that they can acquire with that, and you can get more if you look at it from a season's perspective. You get more meat out of waterfowl than what you think. That's one of the things I've heard big game guys like, we hardly get any meat. I'm like, but that's the point.
Per
you get
bird.
to go out, per bird. You get to go out more over the course of your season, and you acquire quite a bit. It's like you only eat one chicken at a time.
Exactly.
It's like it's no different than what you just went and bought at the store.
Right, exactly.
That's what a limit is. It's one pallet of, say, chicken at your store. And so
I don't know about you, but I have a hell of a lot more fun collecting geese and ducks than I do buying chicken at Costco.
Yes, I agree.
Anyway, yeah, it's just one of those things that's what I love about waterfowl. And we've had this conversation before. Everybody's got their thing.
Yeah.
Yours is mule deer. For big game, I'm an elk guy. But if you told me tomorrow you can only hunt one thing, that's it. You can hunt one animal, one type of hunting. It's going to be waterfowl for me. I'm going to go, bye-bye big game. I'm going to I'll broaden it out. I would like to be able to add upland birds in there because I really enjoy.
You'd be real tired of that dark
hunting
meat
sage grouse. I really enjoy hunting pheasants. I really enjoy hunting mountain grouse. I like that upland stuff, especially where we live. That's the beginning of the fall. That's the beginning of the fall, and so I could say wing shooting. I guess that's what I do. That's what I do. I'd be like, no, okay, bye big game. I'm gonna wing shoot.
I hope I never have to make those decisions.
No, I hope so. I hope so too. I hope so too. And I don't think we ever will. It's just a hypothetical, but
it's a fun hypothetical to talk about. I mean, but that's why the management is so key. Like when the Sage Grouse film that you guys have been working tirelessly on, and
which drops Saturday.
Okay, Saturday. So maybe this episode
today
needs
is
to drop pretty quick.
Today is September 1st. If you're listening to this and it's later in September, go to the Wingman, shameless plug, go to the Wingman YouTube channel. It should be on the Eastmans YouTube channel as well.
Yep.
And look for our Sage Grouse short film. It's going to be about 17, 20 minutes long, somewhere in there. Guys, what this film is about is everybody knows that sage grouse are in trouble. They have been for a long time. Numbers have been declining. Grouse are cyclical. They kind of go up and down. But the overall trend of sage grouse mirrors that of mule deer.
Yep.
They're declining. We have a pretty good idea why, but there's a crux to that. If these birds get listed as they've been proposed on the ESA, the Endangered Species List, it will affect in public land area the size of Texas.
Yep. It'll be huge.
It'll be massive. And what I mean by effect is there will be seasonal closures. When those birds are breeding, you won't be able to go out there.
Yep.
When you may not even be able to hunt that ground for mule deer. You may not be able to fish the rivers that run through it. It's definitely going to affect the economy to the tune of billions of dollars for energy. And I don't care if it's green energy, wind, solar, or if it's petroleum production. It has an impact. It's going to affect ranching. It's going to affect all these different things. And what we wanted to do, what we thought we'd do with this film is we go do a sage grouse hunt. We talk about sage grouse conservation. Oh, cute little story, right?
Yep.
Wrong. That was 2 years ago. This film's been 2 years in the making. And we started digging in, and it was like, holy smokes.
Yep.
There's predation involved. There's feral horses involved.
Yep.
there's human impact involved from, obviously energy production and development to overgrazing to highways. Can't do anything about the highways that we've built, but it's impacted sage grouse over time.
Yep.
And I'm not saying any of those things is bad. That's not what we're talking about. One of the biggest things that we realized is wildfire mitigation through cheatgrass mitigation. Cheatgrass is rampant across the West, and what it does is it increases the fuel load in the understory of sagebrush, so you get these wildfires that are sparked by whatever, usually lightning, and it burns out the sagebrush and it doesn't recover. And then the only thing that comes back is more cheatgrass.
Yep.
And there's a whole big process there, including government agencies not seeing eye to eye, and so one of them has approval to use a sagegrass treatment, and the other one doesn't. And it's like, what? I don't get it. There's so much of this stuff that
so many layers.
We can see the solution. We know what we need to do to fix the sage grouse problem, and probably have a pretty solid impact on mule deer numbers as well.
It would.
And we're not doing it.
It's an all and. Like if you took the horses are a huge piece of the equation.
Huge.
I grew up in
Ravens.
an area that had them. Yep. Horses were a huge piece of it. The quality of habitat, like what you're talking about with the cheatgrass, that's a huge piece of the equation. And then on top of that, you throw in cyclical droughts, which happen. You know, animal numbers go down when there's a drought. It's just the way that works. But you tie all these things together and you look at what human factors can we contribute, and it's an all and effort. It's not a do one singular piece.
Right.
And so that's like, for instance, like with mule deer, it's you have to look at it from the perspective of, okay, they live at one area in the summer, they live at a completely different area in January, and they migrated everywhere in between in the process, both directions, late fall and spring. So if you look at that, well, let's start with one thing. Let's start with the pinch points. Where can we get rid of those pinch points? And then you work your way backwards. But a lot of those pinch points, and also a lot of the open land where the mule deer end up in the winter, guess what? That's also sage grouse country.
Yes.
I bet there's a lot of things tied together.
There are. There's no doubt that the two are inextricably linked. Mm-hmm. We're out there on the counting Lex this spring. I got the loophole spotter all dialed up, and I'm looking at these birds and looking for birds.
Yep.
It was a crap morning. It was blizzarding and cold, but it was in the exact same area that is the heart of mule deer winter range.
Yep.
And antelope and elk. There's all kinds of stuff out there. But the point is that film drops this Saturday, so it's going to drop September 3rd. If you're listening to this later, tune in. You'll find it. We've been promoting it on our social media feeds, on Instagram and on Facebook, and couldn't be happier to have the partners involved that we've had. Eastmans has been, obviously the parent company of Wingmen, and has the support that Ike in particular has thrown into this, and the indefatigable amount of enthusiastic work from Lindsay Wyon.
Yeah.
That woman has put in more time. I mean, you see me on camera, and I'm like, and
just a pretty face, right?
Yeah,
Todd?
pretty much.
Good. I'm glad you caught that.
Yeah, exactly. No, I got it.
Meet that backhanded compliment.
Right. But Lindsay has done so much of the legwork for this. She's lined out all the interviews. She's drafted all the questions. Unbelievable amount of work that goes into this. I am super proud of this film. The full-length film is going to air. It's going to be huge.
Yeah. And
it's going to air sometime midwinter of 2023, probably January, maybe February. And so stay tuned for that as well. You might be sitting in Michigan going, I don't care about sage grouse. Well, yes, you will, because if you like to come out west and recreate on public ground, and I mean ride dirt bikes, hunt, trout fish, do whatever, photograph, whatever it might be, you're going to be impacted by that. Not to mention the economic impact it's going to have nationwide because of the impact it will have on energy production. And I don't care if it's, like I said, fossil fuel production or green production. It doesn't matter.
I hope we don't go there.
I hope so too. There's no need to. There's no reason to. I think we know how to fix it. It's a manpower issue, and we got to get it done. Yep. And so it's one of those things that. And here's the other thing.
Time, effort, and zeros.
I'm just hanging on to this, but here's the other thing. The listing of the sage grouse at this point is not necessary.
Yep.
We have hundreds of thousands of these birds on the landscape still. Mm-hmm. It's not too late. It's not like, we got to do it now. It's not like there's 2 of them left.
Yeah.
We're not looking at an extinction event. Yeah. We're looking at conserving and getting out front, being proactive and conserving what we have and building those numbers back up. It's the same with mule deer.
Yep.
It's not like we don't have lots of mule deer. We do. But historically, our numbers aren't
highs.
where they were. And there could be lots of reasons for that. Look at, the 1950s and 1960s were the height of mule deer, blah, 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 blah. Well, they were for sage grouse too. But look what we were doing at that time. Yeah. We were suppressing predators like it was, like our lives depended on it.
Including ourselves. Look at the number of men that were fighting. They were hunting other things in other places.
And our speed limits were 55 miles an hour. We didn't have vehicles that could go fast as they are today. You look at the numbers of dead mule deer on the roads.
Yep.
We talk about this all the time. This is opinion. You don't need mule deer doe tags.
Yep.
Because you are right now we're controlling that mule deer take through roadkill.
Yep.
We're killing enough mule deer does and fawns every year on the highway. We don't need to be shooting them. Yep. We shouldn't be shooting them.
Well, if you look at the number of mule deer, I wrote an article on this. I should be able to recall the numbers better. You can find it on Eastman's blog. But I talked about the number of mule deer that get hit on the highway in Wyoming.
Yes.
And it's a significant percentage. And so these overpass projects as well as these underpass projects plus high fences in the high traffic winter range areas.
Funnel areas.
It will make a huge difference. And I'd be willing to bet money that sage grouse would use those too. If they transition.
It's a little different because you're looking at something that can fly versus has to walk. But the idea behind of putting money behind conservation projects.
I bet they'd use those overpasses.
Maybe. It'd be interesting to see. You'd really have to study it because what we saw, especially down in that part of the world, what we saw was fences being one of the largest barriers.
Really?
Yeah, because they fly low to the ground, and they don't see those barbed wire fences.
I'd be curious because the way they built those overpasses in Sublette County is 100% conjecture. I have no idea.
Right.
But I'm also an optimist. So when you look at like the ones that you have in Sublette County, they're giant overpasses. They're yards wide.
Oh yeah, they're big.
And so like they have the high fences on there, and because they are low flyers, they could still fly over them and use them.
They could. We're also talking about a bird versus a mammal.
Yeah.
They don't reason.
They don't think
like that. No, they just fly and they do what's ingrained in them. It is what it is. But the biggest thing we can do is, predator management, feral horse management, cheatgrass mitigation, and conserving habitat. Yep. Through sagebrush restoration projects and mesic area restoration projects. And I mean, we could go on for days and days and days.
Well, that's why we have a film about it.
Yep, absolutely. So check that film out. And while you're snooping around, make sure that you're checking out Wingmen on Instagram and on Facebook as well. We got a killer YouTube channel, guys, that I know from looking at the numbers you're missing out on. So check that out as well. And I am stoked, man. I'm going to go finish up, and Brandon and I tomorrow are going to get together, and we're going to load up the Savages and the Federal and the Sitka, and I'd probably take a case of these because I don't want to drive 20 hours without that. I tell you what.
Well, we have some of the instant stuff or the bags that's back.
Yeah,
of it.
Black Rifle Coffee has kind of revolutionized how I drink coffee, to be honest. I mean, I look at between the instant, the ready to drink, and then the ground stuff, not ground, the whole bean coffee that I prefer. It's like I've always got coffee.
Yep.
Where before I was kind of, drinking gas station coffee or doing this. Although I will admit, going to Canada, I'm probably going to spend a fair amount of money in Tim Hortons.
I forgot about that place.
Oh, I told Brandon,
funny.
I'm like, I'm going to buy a giant bag of donut holes, and every time we see one, we're going to stop and get coffee. We won't need to, but it's just one of those things. It's like when I go to the Midwest, I have to stop at Casey's.
Enjoy the local fare.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Scott, thank you for jumping on the podcast. We were all over the map today in this hour and 20 minutes, but I enjoyed our conversation like always, and good luck on your mule deer hunt.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to see what you drag out of those hills.
Llamas will drag it out. I won't.
Llama drama. Sounds good. All right, guys. Thanks again for joining us on today's podcast. And thank you to our partners, Sitka, Savage, Onyx, Black Rifle Coffee, High Mountain, Leupold. You guys are the ones that make this possible, so we can bring this to you. And I really appreciate that very, very much. And until next time, we'll see you in the field.